This session will focus on Socratic circles and Paideia seminar. During our time together, we will take a look at what a Socratic Paideia seminar is, how to begin using them in the classroom setting, and some example plans and other resources to support implementation. Paideia is a Greek word meaning the rearing, nurturing, or education of a child. Socratic is related to Socrates and his philosophy of questioning. And seminar is a meeting for discussion. So if you take those and put them together, you'll understand what Paideia seminar or Socratic seminar is. A Paideia seminar is based on three teaching types: didactic instruction, intellectual coaching, and seminar discussion. These types of seminars are great for any grade level and all subject areas. They are not debates, but rather collaborative activities. So it's a student-centered approach that challenges learners to develop critical thinking skills, including metacognition, and engage in analytic discussion. Didactic is teacher-centered instruction, which includes careful planning and organization. It provides a clear focus and it's brief. Intellectual coaching, the teacher is the encourager. The teacher helps students understand the process and skills and then guides the students in their practice of those skills. And seminar discussion is where students are actively engaged in collaborative and respectful dialogue about a text. Why should you use this strategy? This strategy can be used to increase students' critical thinking skills during their shared discussion. The students will gain social skills as they learn respectful ways to respond to their classmates. The students will build intellectual and communication capacity. They'll participate in active learning through thoughtful dialogue, and they'll work together to construct meaning. Students will consider higher order thinking questions and they will support claims. They will become a community and it will be an inclusive setting as everyone has a chance to participate. Students will work towards the collaboration and communication skills that they will need to become college and career ready. Students become active participants, and again, all ideas are valued. They are not discussing to win an argument, it's not a debate. So, your seminar can take a couple of different formats. The format on the left is a format where you have two circles, one large outer circle and then a smaller inner circle. And this is typically how a Socratic circle is set up. The one on the right is typically how a Paideia seminar is set up, but you could kind of use a hybrid model. You may start off with your students in the model on the left, and then as they become more adept at having these types of discussions, then you may move to more of one large group discussion. So in the Socratic circle model, the inner circle are the students who are discussing the text. Your outer circle is for the students who are observing and note taking. And then you would have a moment where you would pause and you would have a debrief session, and then students would switch roles and continue that discussion. This is a great way to start out when you're first starting these types of discussions, because you can choose the students that you think would do best in the inner circle. And those might be students you have observed during class time that are able to hold conversation in a respectful manner, and they're already comfortable speaking up. So you know that they will not just let the discussion drag. Um, So you would have to do some observing before you get ready to have the seminar to find out who those students are. And then once your students are comfortable with discussing and holding seminar, then you can move to more of the larger group. So it's really up to you and your students how you want to structure the seminar. So, how do you get started? So the teacher and student have individual roles for seminar. The teacher is basically the facilitator. The teacher will ask questions, redirect students with focused questions if the discussion starts to lag or if students go off on tangents. The teacher is not a referee. So the teacher really takes a back seat and the students really are doing the work. The teacher can also assist with clarification if a student has repeated a response and others are still not understanding, then the teacher can help step in and clarify that point. Students are the active participants, so they are the ones that are respectfully sharing ideas and opinions. They're building off of others' thoughts, and they are coming to the seminar already prepared to have that discussion and to listen carefully to each other's ideas and thoughts. The teacher is basically a coach because she prepares the students prior to the seminar to help them get ready to be able to make and have that discussion. And then the students are doing the prep work and setting the goals and then holding the discussion, reflecting, and extending. So the seminar cycle looks like this. The first part of the cycle is where the students are actually reading the text that the teacher has selected. The teacher could select text from Jacob's Ladder, news ELA articles. There could be podcasts that students listen to. The teacher may decide to use a math Olympiad problem or even just an image. After the teacher has selected the text and the students have had time to analyze that text, then they will prepare for their participation in the dialogue. They'll discuss open-ended questions that the teacher provides. They should experience clarifying, probing, and viewpoint type questions as they work through the seminar. And then you would want to engage students in a post-writing activity or some kind of follow-up activity. The students could respond to a prompt to further consider the topic. The follow-up activity should just allow students to go deeper in their thinking and consider the ideas that others shared during the seminar. And again, the text could be art, math, it could be a poem, it could be a short story. You could even use cartoons or video shorts. Um, but as long as there is something for the students to have a discussion around. Your post-writing activity or follow-up activity could also relate to social issues to have those students thinking deeper. So the process kind of follows this line of thinking. The teacher selects the text. Again, talked about several different types of text that you could have: images, math problems, poems, fairy tales, fables, anything that the teacher thinks is a valuable piece of text that can be analyzed and discussed. The students will conduct multiple close readings of that text prior to the discussion. And you can provide some frameworks for students to organize thoughts with, and we'll look at some of those in just a minute. Then the teacher would select open-ended questions and provide those to the students prior to the discussion so that they can come prepared. And as students become more adept at the seminars, then they may start to create questions of their own to ask in the seminar. Once the students have had time to reflect on the questions and get their thoughts down on paper, then they come prepared to the seminar. You would want to allow time to go over some classroom norms and goals and to have students set individual goals. And then they would hold the seminar. and they'll discuss their questions, assumptions, and understandings around the text. And then you would move into the post-writing activity where students are given their follow-up activity to further that thought process. So thinking about the goal setting that students are going to do, the students need to set a personal goal. And as you get more practice with seminar, they can have multiple goals, but I would suggest just one goal to begin with. The class will also set goals and norms together so that they can have a focus for what they all should be doing during the discussion. And then you want to allow time after seminar for students to reflect on those individual and classroom goals. And they can also go ahead and set goals for the next seminar. The types of questions that you want students to work with are round robin questions, clarifying questions, and evidence questions. The round robin type questions are great for starting out because it gives everyone a chance to get involved in the discussion. They're usually a question that only requires maybe a one-word response or a reaction to the text. And so that just goes very quickly and allows everyone to have a chance to respond. And it feels like you're making everyone a part of the discussion. The clarifying questions are used to get students to go further in their explanation and give examples of what they're trying to convey. And then you want to also ask evidence questions where you're asking students to really pull exact wording from the text to support their reasons and rationales for the ideas that they're sharing. And we'll look at a few of these sentence stems that you can give students also to help them in their responses. So another great thing to incorporate with seminar would be icons of depth and complexity because you want students to be thinking about different viewpoints and perspectives as they hold these conversations. And so using the multiple perspectives icon would be a great one to incorporate. And then asking questions about questions. So getting students to continue to question and probe. You might also use ethics questions. These would be especially useful when you do your follow-up activity to get students to really grapple with how things would affect and or have affected them or others, and think about implications and consequences. And then, of course, using the big idea because all of the questions that you ask and that students will ask should lead to the understanding of the big concept and develop that knowledge around those. You could also incorporate literature webs or thinking webs like the Paul's Wheel of Reasoning. These would be a great way to structure students' analysis of the text. So when they're using the literature web, they would be thinking about their feelings as the reader and also any characters' feelings. They would be looking for images and symbols, thinking about how the structure impacts the text, thinking about main ideas and key ideas, what's the author trying to say, and then keywords. Is there any like new vocabulary or interesting vocabulary that was used? And then for thinking about viewpoints and perspectives, you could bring in Paul's Wheel of Reasoning. And so these are just ways that you can help students to organize their thinking. Anytime you can give them, a graphic organizer, it could be helpful as students start to plan out their responses for a seminar. And it's just a good way to scaffold for students. So you want to start small and provide some supports, just like we were just saying about the graphic organizers and scaffolding. Start with a smaller piece of text. You don't want them to have to read a huge chunk of text for their first seminar. So you could use a fable, a fairy tale, or a poem, something that can be read rather quickly. You're going to provide them with 4 to 6 questions that they think about and respond to prior to seminar. You want to do this so students can plan their responses so that you have students who have trouble like getting thoughts out, then they've had some time to think about that prior. And then you can supply dialogue starters for students that could be stuck on how to be respectful or just how to start off their response. And so we'll look at a few of those in just a minute. So again, we talked about how the seminar would be a dialogue and not a debate. A dialogue is collaborative, whereas a debate is oppositional. You certainly don't want the seminar to get to that point. Dialogue is listening to find agreement and meaning, whereas a debate is listening to find flaws and weaknesses. When you have dialogue, that enlarges and possibly could change points of view. But when you're debating, you're trying to affirm your own point of view. And then dialogue also complicates positions and issues as you think about possibly changing your point of view or thinking about implications that you possibly had not thought about. But a debate is simplifying positions and issues. So we want to make sure that we're sticking to just dialogue and not debate. And it's important to set that up at the beginning so students understand what you're doing. Now we will look at some examples and resources. We're going to look at a few Paideia seminars in action with some first graders and some fourth graders. You can also find additional videos at facinghistory.org. And so we'll watch these 2 short clips.
How does learning about George Rosa inspire you? It inspires me to be a better world. And Rosa inspires me to be brave because she was brave when she told me about her. She inspires me. They both inspire me by being brave. Don't I agree with Charlotte because it is good to change bad laws and help them. Why do people seem to appreciate the nice spot? According to this text, it says the internet can be full of hateful comments and put downs to spread positive thoughts instead a little blue robot is sharing happiness. In the text, it says that David Weber writes about how technology affects ideas. He got a tweet from Nicebot. He tweeted, "Thank you, parentheses at Nicebot." That means so.
So here are a few sample plans. The one on the left is for a book called The Wednesday Wars for the chapters September through December. You can see how the icons of depth and complexity were incorporated for each question to help the kids understand how to think about the question. This is just a question set, not really the plan for the seminar, but just the questions that students were going to use to discuss. And then on the right, you have lineage seminar questions. And so this goes through the actual plan. The pre-seminar activity would be to look at some vocabulary words to define. Then it breaks the questions down by the opening question, which would be more like a round robin. And then they have 4 core questions, and then they have their closing question. A lot of times the closing question will be used to generate thinking for the post-seminar activity. In this particular plan, the students can choose one of the 2 post-seminar activities where both are writing a one-page editorial, but one states why children's lives are easy today and the other states why they are harder today. And so you can get more of these sample plans at the National Paideia Center. They have a large bank of different plans that you can pull from. These are some examples of what you can do post-seminar. You can see that students are going to transition to writing. And so in this one, they're going to get some sticky notes, and then they're going to place those sticky notes in order and compare posters that are made up of the same ingredients. And they're going to discuss how 2 groups of the 100 numbers are alike and different. And then their writing task is going to be to respond to the activity they did in the transition, where they're using evidence from the text to support their claims, and just taking their thinking a little bit further. You may also want to have students use any burning questions that they still have to design and conduct their own independent research. And so then it's, student interest based, but also relates to the text. And again, you can find more of these sample plans and tasks at the National Paideia Center. Additional follow-up activities that you could incorporate would be reflective journaling, both on the content and the performance. The writing could be poetry, narratives, reflective journals. They could develop a thesis statement or an essay. They could record new vocabulary words and how they are used. They can document strategies and techniques that help them to explore the meaning. Um, so you might have them go back to the literature web or Paul's Wheel of Reasoning, and talk about something that helped them, almost graphic organizers, to really think through the questions. They could also create an autistic product, or perform an original performance. And here are some sentence frames that students can use for either clarifying or for changing the subject or for affirming and being respectful about an idea or adding on to it. These are great for students to keep in a notebook or a journal to bring to the seminar with them. That way, if they get stuck, they can go back and refer to these sentence frames to help them out with their wording. Also, you'll see the personal participation goals here. There's a developing list and an advanced list. And so when you're first starting out, you would have students choose something from developing. And then as they get more accustomed to the seminar, they could choose from the advanced list. And so your class goals could come from this, as well as your individual goals could come from this list. And certainly you can add others to that as well. And then they would go back and reflect on those. But if students are having trouble choosing a goal, then it's great to have this list available for them to choose from. At buildingbookLove.com, the author has some great ideas for keeping Socratic Seminar interesting and engaging, and even using technology with your Socratic Seminar. Some of the ideas include using Flipgrid to gather responses. And in her specific example, she was gathering some responses to questions prior to the seminar, and then she was using those as exemplars to share out for students to use in a small group discussions rather than one large whole group discussion. She also had these cute emoji task cards to provide sentence stems and to also use those for tracking participation. She also used a Google Doc to collect responses from hesitant students, so students who weren't so willing to share vocally, but they had the option to go into the Google document and share some responses, and then she could include those in the discussion. Some other ideas to help manage your seminar would be to use small items like paper clips or plastic chips, and you give the students a certain number of those, and once they have spoken, they have to put a chip or whatever you're using in, down on the table or in the middle of the circle. And that helps keep track of the students that are contributing to the discussion and not have students dominate the discussion. So once their, say, 3 chips are used up, then they have to let others talk. So just a good monitoring um, strategy. You could also have a related activity or purpose for students who are not prepared for seminar. So if you've got students that didn't do the pre-work, then you want to have something for them to do so they still feel that they're included in the activity. But if they're not prepared to actually share in the discussion, you at least want them either taking notes or having a purpose to be involved in some way. And these are the resources that I pulled information from. So feel free to visit those articles and read more about Socratic Seminar, and definitely visit the National Paideia Center. It has lots of resources that you can use. So I hope that you'll find this strategy useful in your classroom, and hopefully you can share this with gen ed teachers so that they can use this as well. And maybe you can model that for them so that they become comfortable using that strategy, and the kids become very accustomed to having that great dialogue with one another. If you have any questions or would like any of the resources that were shared in the slide deck, then please reach out to me and I'll be happy to share those resources with you.